Hello and welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, that's Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we have another golden episode lined up for you. Matthew Teague Miller from Chico State is on the show, and we get deep into the specifics of their program, their social justice mindset, the challenges and opportunities of being a new BFA program. We have a chat about intimacy coordinators and the landscape of the college world as Matthew sees it. I think Matthew does a really great job of articulating what they are and aren't trying to be, and I think you'll really enjoy the episode. For our seniors, you're now deep into the busy season. I hope you're all doing well. Pre-screens and applications, oh my. Make sure you're taking time to breathe and take care of yourself amidst the craziness, but definitely the work you're doing now will pay off in the months to come, so be proud of yourself for that sweat as well. I will say, for those of you who heard our Florida State episodes a few weeks back, I'm recording an addendum to that intro as we speak because we were not quite ready to announce that they were going to be part of our 4-school private audition weekend in December. We kind of knew that, but it wasn't yet fully announced to all the MTCA students. But our MTCA students will now have heard that, and I'm excited for those of you who are able to participate to be able to join us. As you are all lining up your early audition schedules, whatever those early auditions you might be considering, please, please, please do not forget to include an MTCA mock audition in that preparation. From years of doing this, that mock is really a game changer in taking your pre-screen preparation work to being able to be confident for your prime audition season. And those early auditions are a great way to practice too, but nothing replaces a mock with the kind of feedback that you're going to get from us. No wedding updates now that we're a week into being a married couple. Do you guys want baby updates? Do you want to hear about potty training? Probably not. I think you're dealing with enough crap on your own floors at the moment, I would imagine. So let's just get right into this episode with Matthew Teague Miller. Well, we are so excited to have Matthew Teague Miller of Chico State University on the pod. Matthew is a BFA in MT from CCM, an MFA in directing from UNC Greensboro, who we're about to have on the pod as well. He's the president of the Musical Theater Educators Alliance. He was an actor in the Broadway tour of Les Mis and lots of other stuff. He's directed places like Timberlake Playhouse and George Street Playhouse. He is also a fellow podcaster, and you've heard his name before on this very podcast as Kikau Alvaro, who is representing University of the Arts, referred to him as Maddie of their Carefully Taught podcast, and we may refer to him as Maddie ourselves. Matthew's also trained in best practices and consent-based casting, which we're going to take a little detour into today as well. And he is now the Associate Professor of Theater, the Program Coordinator for Musical Theater, BFA, and Associate Chair of the Department of Music and Theater at Chico State University. Matthew, was that bio long enough for you? Did we do enough stuff in the bio?
I tend to keep myself busy. The only thing is since that bio that you read, I'm now the immediate past president of the Musical Theater Educators Alliance.
You've just retired.
I just turned out, yes.
But you don't want to put it on you don't want to put it on the Instagram or the whatever it is, wherever we got your bio from? You don't need to update these things?
I don't know. There are so many bios in so many places. I can't possibly update them.
I read a bio of myself the other day from TPAP, because I teach at the Performing Arts Projects each year, and it was like 6 years old. I couldn't believe my past self, what I had written. It's still up there. You can go find it. I'm like, oh God, this is not true. But because people come for the bios, the second half of it we'll just do is that Chico, of course, is in Chico, California. They're shooting for class sizes about 18, though we'll talk about maybe some of the differences of class sizes. And they offer a degree in BFA MT and a BA in music.
Wow.
Matthew, officially welcome on the pod. Shall we now transition to calling you Maddie? Can we do that?
Yes, please.
Okay,
we are officially friends.
We've done it.
2 minutes into the conversation, we're taking it to the next level.
Well, other than resigning from your presidency or being termed out, or I don't know if you were, what's it called when they censured or something? I don't know what happened and got impeached.
No, that wasn't that. Nothing dramatic.
But other than that, tell me a little bit about your journey to Chico State. Is there anything in that wasn't in the bio, or any details that we'd want to throw in there in terms of how you became the man that you are today?
Well, I mean, so yeah, I did study at UNCG. I love that you're having them on the podcast because that is a young BFA musical theater
Hmm.
program that didn't even exist when I got my MFA there 10 years ago.
Yep.
So that's where I did my graduate work. It's where I met my wife,
Hmm.
and who was getting her MFA in acting at the time, Jamie. And when we graduated with our degrees, we kind of floundered. We didn't know exactly what to do. In addition to being the Chico State Musical Theater Program Coordinator for the first 5 years that I worked here, I was also the artistic director of a small equity theater company in the Midwest called the Clinton Area Showboat Theater, which I still have a relationship with. I served as their casting director this year and directed their opening production of Young Frankenstein. So how did I become the man I am today? Oh my gosh, how do I even answer that question?
We've got time. We've got time, Maddie. We can go deep if we need.
Let's go deep. I'm from Northern California, and
Hmm.
when I graduated high school in 1995, there were like 15 to 20 musical theater programs in the whole country
Hmm.
and none in Northern California. So, I went to Cincinnati, which was not near where I
Hmm.
grew up, because there were no options locally. So, when Chico State popped up for me at the time, it was a BA in
Hmm.
musical theater when I got here, which we can talk about that transition in a moment if you want. But I was really excited to come back to Northern California and really breathe life into a program that didn't exist when I was looking for programs, would have saved me a lot of money
Uh-huh.
if it did. And I would have been close enough to my family that, I could have, it would have been a totally different experience for me.
Yep.
So I'm really grateful for this opportunity because my family's still in Northern California. I'm not going anywhere. Like in this day and age where there's so much
Uh,
turnover in musical theater
Talk about it.
programs,
Half my
there's
podcast is ruined. I'm like, can you stay for a second? I just released that episode. Come
yeah,
on.
this one you can leave on here
Okay,
for a
good.
while because
Good.
I'm not going anywhere because, like I said, this is the program that I
Hmm.
was meant to lead.
Well, and you were
So
solving, you mentioned two problems, which we used to hear about all the time, and they still exist, though I think there's a growing number of programs, both out west, which I think has been such a barren wasteland of not having enough musical theater, especially some acting based programs, but not as much musical theater. We've been doing this almost 20 years. We go out west, once a year, now twice a year, to do mock auditions. And, we have clients out there, and almost all of them are planning to come east. Finally, now some of them are going, well, I might stay west. There's a couple other programs on the West Coast, but then also the big one is cost. I mean,
yeah.
programs that don't cost tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, which I know we'll get into with your costs. So you seems like you found a great marriage that are sort of attacking both of those problems.
Yeah, and I'm so happy here, and I'm really proud of the program that we have become and that we aspire to be because
Mm,
we are obviously very growth mindset
yep.
oriented here at Chico State, and we're really excited about continuing to grow and evolve.
I love it. So, well, let's get into it. Let's get into Chico State, and especially when we talk about who you are and who you aspire to be. You can give me kind of both those answers. But
Yeah.
what does it mean to be a Chico State student? Like, what kind of students are you looking for? What kind of students do you have? What are you sort of growing to be in terms of what Chico State program will be?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that question. So, as I mentioned, when I got here, I'm going into my ninth year here at Chico State. When I arrived, we were a BA in musical theater. It was a liberal arts degree, and we are now in our fourth year of
Hmm.
being a BFA in musical theater, which means
Hmm.
the first class that we took as BFA musical theater students are going into their senior year, which is really exciting. It's the first year we're doing our New York showcase. We're
Uh-huh.
really taking the program to the next level. What does it mean to be, or how would I like Chico State to be understood to the greater community looking for musical theater programs? We have no interest, nor do we aspire to be the most prestigious program in the country.
Hmm.
That's not our goal. Our goal is to be seen as the most inclusive and the most student centered. Everything we do is driven um, in equity and inclusion. We're
Mm-hmm.
one of the only programs in the country that quite literally requires freshmen to take a class in social justice in theater.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as you know, as our listeners know, the musical theater industry in the last 5 years has changed more rapidly and
Yes.
greater than it had in the previous 50 years.
Yep.
And I don't believe that's stopping, because
Mm-hmm.
so much of the change that's been demanded is long overdue. We're getting caught up to
Yep.
the musical theater industry that we thought we were. Some of us thought we were. Some of us with privilege thought we were, and that we want to be. So
Mm-hmm.
our goal here at Chico State is to train the next generation, teach the next generation of musical theater creators to embody and continue to cultivate the next generation of musical theater, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to training people how it's always been done. So we take that part of who we are very, very seriously, and I mean, I being in California, I mean, if I'm just speaking frankly between us, we're able to be unapologetically progressive in a way
Uh-huh.
that some of my colleagues around the country maybe want to be, but
Yep.
can't because of the politics of where they are.
Yep.
I mean, when I said to my dean the year before last, we're going to add this social justice and theater class for all freshmen, she said,
Mm-hmm.
"Great. What else are you going to do?"
Mm-hmm.
So I feel very empowered in that way. I feel very excited about moving in that direction. And
I love that. I love the phrase unapologetically progressive. I mean, that's not a phrase that you hear a lot,
no,
especially
you
in
can't say
academic
that every day.
administration,
Yeah.
even though I think most academic institutions are relatively progressively minded. There's not normally unapologetic. It's normally there's enough bureaucracy and enough, because in so many of the things you're talking about, I think what is so shocking, I think it's so well said, of like the rapidity of change. And I think everybody feels, and so you feel people go, "Oh God, what does that mean?" And you feel people tighten, and you feel people go, and you need to be that much more as you enter the business, educated and confident in what the world you're expecting and demanding is,
Yeah.
because people will need that a little more spoon fed to them potentially. Some people, I mean, some people are like,
Yeah.
"I'm right there with you, let's do this." And some people are going to go, "Wait, so what does this mean? If that changes, what else changes? What are we
Right.
doing here?"
Well, and there's two parts of that too. I mean, part of it is that so many of us with privilege, and I'll refer to myself in that category.
Yes, there was a self gesture for those not
Yeah,
watching
there
the
was.
video. Go ahead.
Some of us with privilege thought we were doing a better job than we were,
Mhm.
because we weren't in the shoes of those who had been historically marginalized
Mhm.
within our industry and within our culture.
Yeah.
So when it was finally brought to our attention, I think a lot of people with privilege got defensive in that white fragility kind of way,
Mhm.
because they're like, "Oh, but I'm not racist. I'm
Right.
not misogynistic." Well, the systems in place were and
Mhm.
are, and it's time that we change that. And so our goal at Chico State is to not burn the whole industry down,
Right.
but use the systems in place to respectfully and authentically create a better musical theater world.
I love it. So well said. Well, now let's get into some of the curriculum. So you mentioned that freshman year, that the social justice curriculum that is required. Talk to me a little through the musical theater elements of acting, singing, dancing. What are the 4 years? Or maybe we talk about a current freshman now, if it's now kind of established. Like, okay, we've done 4 years of the BFA. We have a sense of what it's going. Though certainly, if you're like, and 5 years from now we'll be adding in this, let me know that too. But talk me through, as an actor, how am I going to progress? As a singer, how am I going to progress? And as a dancer, how do I progress?
Okay. Well, one of the things that we take seriously is being student centered. And so every single student is going to have a different experience based on what they want to get out of the program and, quite frankly, what they put into the program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we as a faculty can provide tools to be successful in the industry, but what you do with those tools is entirely up to you. We are starting our New York showcase, but we are not necessarily aspiring to be a New York or bust program.
Uh-huh.
And we will have students and have had students who maybe get to the end of their 4 years and they're like, you know what, this was really fun, but I want to go to Orlando and perform at Disney World.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. If they're happy, that's our goal.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do their 4 years, get their musical theater degree, and like, you know what? I kind of want to teach.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be an elementary school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That's great too, as long as we are giving them the resources that they need to discover for themselves what it is they want to get out of their lives.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a true 8-semester degree. It, we do have transfer students from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
A little challenging with transfer students because most community colleges don't have the private voice classes that we require in order to graduate. Our students have 8 semesters of voice lessons. Our students are required to do 8 semesters of dance, but
Mm-hmm.
they have some freedom in what levels and what styles of dance they teach. I will tell you that probably about 60 to 75% of our students take additional dance classes and actually get a dance minor.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's an 8-semester track with regards to the acting as well.
Mm-hmm.
But our philosophy is that a triple threat, well, first of all, we aspire to teach quadruple threats, and I can circle back to that in a second. But like a triple threat is not somebody who sings, dance, and acts. It's somebody who acts while singing, acts while dancing, and acts while speaking. But we also want to teach students to be social justice activists as well. So those are the 4 things.
That's the 4th element of the quadruple threat. That we're going to square back to it. We're not going to circle back to it. Come on, please. Quadruple. You mentioned their transfer students. So I think, we've talked a little bit about transfers on the pod before, but for you, would a transfer always have to start as a freshman?
Mm-mm.
No, you could come in as a sophomore with equivalent.
You can come in as a junior depending upon what you have taken before you've gotten here. I mean, the California State University system, the CSU, which is the biggest university system in the world, is deeply committed to transfers and providing them with opportunities. And in California, the cost of community college, this isn't true for every state, but the cost of community college in California is so low. I mean, it's practically free. That's what's best for some students. And we are not looking to gatekeep and require them to dump their hard-earned money into a program like this. But again, it does get hard because so few community colleges offer those private voice lessons and or dance classes.
And so, I mean, that is unusual. It's really wonderful, but unusual that some schools will let a sophomore year, but most are all 4 years they make you retake. How would you, is it via audition? Are you sort of opting out to show I have a certain level of dance and so I can jump into junior dance? Or how would that work with a transfer student who wanted to become a junior?
Quite honestly, it has more to do with their transcripts and the classes that they've taken.
The literal credits,
literal credits than their talent or their audition.
Yeah, totally. And then I often ask what discipline of the 3 that you feel like you focus on, or in this case of the 4, does it seem like acting is maybe your most slightly prized above the 3, or is it relatively still equal?
Well, again, I will see previous comment about, our activism and our commitment to social justice and inclusion. That is layered into our music classes, our dance classes, and our acting classes. So if there's one thread, that's it. But like I said, I truly believe that when you say musical theater is the noun, right? Theater is the subject.
I don't know if this is going to be an English class. Wait, hold on. Theater's the noun. I agree. Theater's not a verb. Yes, okay, I'm with you.
So, but musical is the adjective describing that noun. So, it's just a style of theater. So the heart of theater is the storytelling and the acting.
Yes.
So we actually require all of our musical theater students to audition for the plays here at Chico State as well as the musicals, because there is great value in having those experiences, learning how to navigate those at what is different about when you're singing and dancing and when you're not. And frankly, it makes them more marketable upon graduation when they maybe want to do a Shakespeare production, which, we do every other year, and many, many musical theater students will participate in.
Yep. And now, so what if I were a student who was maybe musical theater curious? So, we have a lot of students who do both musical theater and acting programs. Is there an option for me at Chico State if I wanted to say, hey, I want to study acting more intensively? I might want to take some music classes, but I'm not really ready to focus on the musical theater of it all.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you, and this is probably going to sound different than what other musical theater program coordinators will tell you, because I believe that it is so important for us not to try to be everything to everybody and be very honest with prospective students who are looking at our programs. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a teacher who happens to love theater and sharing it with musical theater and sharing it with other people.
Which is just what a salesperson would say, Matt. Just what a good salesperson would say.
Hey, you get off my back. We do not have a BFA in acting. We have a BA in theater arts, and it's a sort of well-rounded liberal arts approach to what theater is. You can focus on acting if you want, but frankly, if you're not a musical theater student and you are really focused on acting, there are better programs for you to look into.
If you want intensive acting training.
That's absolutely. I mean, our musical theater students get intensive acting training, and a lot of those classes our BA and theater students can take. But it is not a rigorous or intensive acting program if you are in the BA in acting.
Totally makes sense. But I guess that was going to be my question of, if you're auditioning for those Shakespeare shows and you're a musical theater major, who are the other people? Are BA theater, or are they also non-majors? Would you also be able to be a science major?
Both. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say primarily it is our shows are cast with the BFA musical theater students, the BA theater students, and then occasionally, well, we also have a minor. We have a BA, a theater arts minor, and plus people that just from across campus. And again, all are welcome here. So we are an inclusive environment, and we welcome anybody who's interested with open arms.
I love it. You mentioned the showcase, our first showcase, so we're only going to talk a little more theoretically, but I'd love to talk both in terms of the showcase and also just your general preparation for their launch into the business. If I do, let's imagine I do want to go to New York and be a Broadway musical theater actor.
Yeah.
How am I going to be prepared for the world outside in terms of the launch into the business?
Yeah. So, the showcase, again, it is, somewhat theoretical, but I'll be very honest with you and say, because I am not a believer that New York is the only place that you can be happy doing musical theater. I mean, there's certainly more jobs in musical theater in New York City than any other. That's just a fact. But there are many other places. And frankly, I don't want my students to feel like if they don't go to New York City, they're a failure, because that's simply not the case. So for a long time, I even with the BA, before we transitioned to the BFA in musical theater and we were a BA in musical theater, we were talking about a showcase and in New York and all of these things. And I really resisted it because, in my day, this showcase where, we rented an off-Broadway theater and we did our group numbers that opened and closed it. And it was like this little 45-minute review. And, at Cincinnati, because it was an established program at the time, people would come, but that wasn't the fact for every single program. I was like, I don't want to get into that game. Then my eyes were opened to how showcases have really evolved, and they're not just these 45-minute showcases like reviews anymore. And so, we're taking the approach with our showcase where we're going to New York for 4 or 5 days. We're going to be meeting with casting directors and agents and industry professionals in coaching sessions, in one-on-one sessions, and the reason why that hugely shifted my mindset is because even if a student is not interested in moving to New York City, they're going to learn something from that experience. Having, one-on-one time with a Broadway casting director, giving them feedback that's an invaluable educational experience. And I am a teacher, right? So if I can provide an educational experience for my students, I want to do it. So, that's the approach that we're taking, which I'm super excited about. We'll see. We're doing this first one. I could come back again, growth mindset. I might come back and be like, well, we're going to do it this way next time. But with regards to the question that you had asked, how are students prepared? We provide them with the opportunities to cultivate the tools necessary to be professionals once they get the jobs. Meaning I believe that our curriculum, our pedagogy with the singing, dancing, acting prepares them. But in addition, we do spend all 4 years talking about how to market yourself, talking about things like what is an agent, what is a manager, how do you get one, what is a casting director, those types of things as well. Our geography, we couldn't be further from the industry in Chico State. Like in the continental United States, it would be harder to be much farther away from the hub, right? But as we learned through the pandemic, if we got anything out of, being in our houses for alone for a year, technology has opened up and connected us with one another in a way that I don't have to be near New York to have Rachel Hoffman from Bernie Telsey, talk to my students and teach them. That has been tremendous in terms of opening the doors in preparation for our students.
Yeah, leveling the playing field, for sure. Well, and you've checked off a box for our careful listeners. Maybe now 10 or 11 episodes ago, I did a little takeaway on listen to the way people talk about their showcases. And I think the creativity and, honestly, just being part of 2023 with it all, I think is just necessary in, basically, unless you're one of those 3, 5, whatever programs you want to name that you go, that's got such an established reputation. People are going to show up to the Snapple Theater and, but it's a different experience. And there were years where I would watch a lot of schools put on showcases that were just not attended by real industry folks. And you go, well, that's not helping your students. They've done all this work and then they feel disappointed and it's not really on them.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to my showcase that I want to just add to what you're saying, because our showcase, sorry, it's not mine, I don't own it.
But you will be performing a little bit, right? We'll get a little taste? No, just a little intro? No, okay.
Them's days is gone.
Well, we'll see.
So we're also doing a huge virtual component because I want to make sure that students have the opportunity to take this material and send it to the casting directors in Chicago if they choose to move to Chicago.
That's right. Or the New York ones who just didn't make it or you weren't part of it. They go, oh, what do you got? It's now expected. People expect you graduate and you have something virtual.
And one thing that we're really lucky about is that Chico State has one of the most vibrant recording arts programs in the state of California, and that's a recording arts state. So we're partnering with our friends over in there to get professional recorded demos that we're going to video in a real high quality way. So that's part of it. And the other thing that was important to me, because of our commitment to equity and inclusion, I didn't want the showcase to turn into who can afford to go and who can't. So all of my graduating seniors are participating in a year-long fundraising effort to pay for everybody to go, regardless of the means that they have in their personal bank accounts. They're all raising money for each other. And that was the only way I was going to get comfortable with it, because it's expensive for anybody to go to New York. But again, see previous comment about we couldn't be further from the city.
And you're renting spaces and you're paying. It's a lot. Yeah.
It's real expensive.
That also, I feel like it was the most fun thing I did senior year was raising money for showcase. Whether it's cabarets or we did a casino night or whatever, it's like we had so much fun doing that too. That was its own community building group experience of we got to raise, I think it was $50,000 at the time to send us all at the showcase. Really fun. Outside of the theater program, I'd love to talk about just the broader university with Chico State. So you mentioned a lot of people get a dance minor. Are there other minors that people get? Do people ever do a double major? How does it work academically in terms of other opportunities?
Absolutely. So my philosophy is you spend a crap ton of money and a crap ton of time getting a college degree. So your education should be exactly what you want it to be, which means maybe you want a double major, which means maybe you want to take your time and not necessarily graduate in 4 years. Maybe you want an extra semester. What you get out of this program is what you want from a program. We don't put more red tape around students' experience than necessary. It will sometimes, not always, but sometimes require a student to do summer classes, to take 18 units a semester rather than 15 units a semester, something like that. Maybe I've had students stay an extra semester if they want to double major, but I've had students double major in, I'm trying to think here. I had one do math. I had another do political science. I had another do, there have been a surprising number of students that have found a love for education.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't double major necessarily, but they took the prerequisites to get into the 5th year education program,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could get their credential.
Mm-hmm.
The state of California recently passed a law where you have to teach theater, you have to have a theater credential,
Mm-hmm.
which didn't even exist like 5 years ago. So students are getting excited about, and some of them are pursuing those things.
Smart.
So yeah, absolutely. But the truth is, it can sometimes take longer than what students think of as the expected timeline for graduation, which, by the way, is a myth. I know it costs money to stay an extra semester, but the only reason that we think that college is supposed to be 8 semesters or 4 years is because somebody told us that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just what people that's just like this inherited thing that
once
is
you're
not
out in the
necessarily
world,
true.
no one's like, wait, you're 22 and a half? This is so wrong. How did that happen?
Right.
What's wrong with you?
That's right. Yeah.
You've mentioned costs a couple of times, so let's get to it. I'd love to talk about kind of what we're talking about all in terms of in-state, out-of-state, and then also just generally how it works with stuff like scholarships for those who might qualify, but also talent scholarships or anything like that exists. So what are we talking about when we talk about cost all in?
Yeah, well, I mean, for those living in the state of California, which I'm sure you have some listeners who are, we're the best bargain in the biz. I mean, it's $8,000 to go to school here for tuition if you are a California resident. Then it's just under 20 if you are from out of state.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this sweet spot in between too, where if you are in one of the western states, there's this thing called WUE. It's spelled WUE, and it's a partnership that the state of California has with. I want to resist listing states because I'm surely going to forget somebody.
Yep.
But like basically, like the Nevada line over, kind of. If you're in one of those,
Matthew, if you're not looking, is just sort of painting the color, the map of the United States. This was the upper west region he was sort of painting.
Yeah, and it's 150% of the in-state tuition. When I say that, it's
$12,000.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I might not be an English major. I don't do good with the subjects and the adjectives and the whatever, but I did good with the math. No problem.
Sweet. Good. So that's sort of a third category that a lot of programs aren't able to offer. But I mean, Chico State, we are in California, but we're not in Los Angeles. So like the cost of living is lower than if you went to one of the Los Angeles area schools. Students are not required to live on campus. We have dorms, and I would say most of our freshmen live in the dorms, but they're not required to. So like you can kind of create the budget that you need to in order to survive as a student in Chico. But again, I always want to make sure to say this, because as I said earlier, I think it's so important for us to be super honest with the students and not try to just sell something that we're not. This is not a big city. This is an old-fashioned college town in California. Yes, California, but we're still a 10-hour drive to Disneyland, a 3-hour drive to the beach. If you want a bustling metropolis, then go study with Kikau at University of the Arts in Philadelphia, because we are not. I mean, it's a cute little town. The university is located right downtown. We've got a park 4 times the size of Central Park, half a mile from our campus. It's an outdoorsy sort of part of California. So
while we're still on cost, though, so obviously your scholarships are not going to be as robust as school that costs $100,000 in terms of the numbers. But what does it? Could I expect any kind of academic scholarship, any kind of artistic scholarship if I'm a really good student? Like, how would that number even potentially come down from there? Or is it most people, if it's the 8,000, you're paying the 8,000?
So the state of California doesn't do merit scholarships in the CSU. We have a handful of freshman scholarships specific for freshmen in the musical theater program. And we've got quite a few more scholarships that students can audition for as returning students, which for a long time I was like, that seems so backwards to me, but I've grown to like it because I don't like making freshmen a promise. Like, I don't like the idea of having all of these freshman scholarships and then sophomore year, you're on your own.
Right.
That's not fair. So we don't, but financial aid is a huge part of our program. We also, one thing that's cool about our program, and this is not super unique to us, but there are a lot of student employment opportunities within the building. Like, you can work in the scene shop, you can work in the costume shop. We do a lot of events outside of theater in our campus, and they're always hiring stage managers and production managers for those things. So there are plenty of opportunities for students to make money in addition to just the scholarships that they're able to audition for.
And I often ask this question in terms of two parts, but I'm going to break it in half here. I often talk about, like, where do your students come from and then where do they end up? Though I know the where do they end up is a little bit unique in this moment. But just in terms of where they come from, what percentage of your students are, since maybe it's been the BFA, what percentage are California or WUI based versus what are, come from around the country?
It's interesting because that's starting to shift with the transition to the BFA. And again, the BFA is 4 years old, but we were those are the COVID years. So we're still trying to find our footing.
Like last year would have been maybe your first kind of normal in-person kind of audition year or whatever.
Yeah. So, and we're going to talk about auditions in a second.
Yes,
so, and I'm excited too, because we're a little unique there as well. The vast majority at this point, the vast majority of our students are from the state of California. Because of the cost and because California is so big, you can go away to college and be 10 hours from home.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're coming from Southern California and living in Chico.
It'd be like me going to Chicago from Pittsburgh. It's like huge change. Yeah,
totally. So, but we do have other students. We've got a couple of students from the Midwest. We've got more students from Washington because the state of Washington doesn't have a lot of musical theater offerings. So we get a lot of students from up there. But at this point, California seems to be where most of our students are coming from.
Well, and that in-state tuition, I'm sure, helps in terms of that, of being such a good option. But okay, so in terms of the ending up of it all, I guess I'm curious. So you will see with this class, and you can talk about the BAs a little bit of how many ended up on the East Coast or in Chicago or Seattle or wherever they ended up. But I'm also kind of just curious with these West Coast programs of is there a path now where people think I'm going to go to LA and do musical theater? Because I'll say so many of my friends who are musical theater people, Tony Award winners and whatever, win a Tony Award and then move to LA. But it doesn't seem like, right? But I mean, that seems like easy enough of okay, cool. And then I'll get a TV show and then I'll do whatever, right? But it doesn't seem like right now, a lot of people who say, I want to start in musical theater would ever say, I'm going to start by moving to LA, unless they're saying I want to do TV and film. So I guess I'm curious of is there a plan in the works or a sort of, as we have more and more musical theater schools out West, is the idea that people might stay West at all and try to do musical theater there?
We have some students go back down to the Los Angeles, Orange County area, but they really are the students that are driven to use their musical theater skills and find a spot in the television landscape. Chicago is another place that several of my students have gone. But I mean, there, like I said earlier, I don't remember if this was before we started recording or not, but there are more jobs in New York for musical theater than any other place in the world. So
it just strikes me as similarly that's how the schools were. But I'm it's not like people in LA don't like singing. Why wouldn't we have a robust musical theater industry on the West Coast? It could be creative. There's nothing magical about Broadway the street that it's the only place you can sing. But we'll need your students to create it. I feel like it's more of a note than really a question. I guess I'm go build it out there. Why not? We got all these talented performers.
I can take a note. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, and one of the things that's interesting too, and I'll be interested to see how this evolves once they are able to settle the strikes that are happening and whatnot. Musicals on film are starting to look a lot different than they did. 15, 20 years ago. And I'll be interested to see how that continues to evolve. That might carve out an even bigger place for musical theater in the Southern California area.
Yep, so true. Okay, the last question, and then we're going to dive into auditions in the second half of the show here. I just want to talk a little bit about, being a new program,
Yeah.
a newer program or a evolving growth-minded program. I guess what are some of the challenges you encounter? I love that you're so generous with, saying UNCG, that's a new program too, and we love them.
Yeah.
But it is a pretty competitive landscape in terms of many more newer emerging programs than there certainly were 15, 20 years ago. What are you encountering, in terms of what students are expecting or in terms of your growth? I guess what are some of these challenges of the growth that you're trying to achieve as a newer BFA program?
See, that's so funny because I actually feel empowered as a new program more than I feel like I have my hands tied. I mean, again, I try very hard to be authentic and honest. One of the things that we don't have as a newer program is the legacy of alumni and the alumni network that older, more established programs have when students. When I graduated from CCM, I was immediately part of a fraternity of people that I don't know that any of them ever got me a job, but they certainly could have.
Right.
You know,
have a
that's
community built in, and
community, and that is a hard part of that transition post graduation. So we don't have that as a newer program, but as a newer program and one that's still cultivating our identity, I feel incredibly empowered to again be unapologetically progressive, to maybe rethink how we teach musical theater history in a way that it's not something that we've offered for 40 years and this is how it's always been done, so we have to continue to do it that way.
That's so interesting. I mean, you have the power to move fast and break things as the tech people do in a way that I've talked a lot. I went to Carnegie Mellon University way back in the day, and I've talked a lot with the people who are still there, who were my teachers, of like, how are you successfully evolving in some of the ways that these other places are able to go? We're current, we snap our fingers, we get it done. Where it's a little harder when you have a legacy, but things are kind of working, and it's a little harder to get this, moving in the right direction. In some ways, maybe you have more advantages than disadvantages like that.
Well, at least that's how I've chosen to think about it.
It's a great way to think of it. I love that. All right, let's do a break. And at the back end of the break, we're going to talk a little bit about the audition and then a couple special questions as well. So back in a flash. All right, we are back with Matthew Teague Miller, who we will be referring to as Matty moving forward. And we want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the unique audition process. So let's talk about the audition process for Chico State, what makes it unique, and then kind of what you're looking for in a good audition.
Yeah. So what makes us unique is that we are so committed to equity and inclusion. Prior to this year, we didn't even have an audition because we wanted to welcome everybody with open arms. That was easy as a BA in musical theater, but even the first 3 years of the BFA were like, just come. We love you. If you love musical theater and you want to be here, we didn't want to gatekeep people out of being able to pursue what they loved. Now, it was great in theory. The practice of that was challenging and difficult to manage. So we did start an audition process with this year's freshman class, but the agreement that I've had with myself is the only way we're going to do that is if it doesn't cost students much, if anything. So nobody has to travel to come to see us in person. We don't do the unifieds. We don't do all of those things. You don't need to come to Chico. We do it 100% entirely online. And there are two parts to the audition process. Well, first off, you've got to apply to the university, obviously. We use Get Accepted for people to submit their audition materials. And then after that, our callback is simply a Zoom interview with me. And that's the entire process. The only thing besides the application fee for the university, the only thing that students have to pay for is it's like a $25 or $30 Get Accepted.
Right, to upload the video.
Right. Yeah. But beyond that, we wanted to try to make it as accessible as possible for students to be able to come here and study what they love.
And that audition is basically, if they have pre-screen materials from other schools, are they just basically submitting 2 monologues, 2 songs, whatever, the basic pre-screen materials from the common pre-screen or whatever they've got?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I deliberately based our audition material on the pre-screen material so that it was as easy as possible for students that were already putting these packages together to submit us the material that they're submitting other places, and not add some extra hurdle where they have to do some, there's like a tight window. You need to sing a song from between 1972 and 1975, like just as a test.
And that's what a lot of those are. I mean, I explain it to my students. They're like, why would they do that? I'm like, there are schools that just go, I don't want to be just another school you're applying for. I want to know that you specially care about me. And so I made it a little trickier, even though you're like, that is so tough for the kids who are doing 15, 16, 20 schools to have to do that. Now, it won't be 20 times, but it's like just the schools that say, make it special for me. Do a little intro at the beginning where you talk about me or whatever. Just more.
Again,
more.
I just firmly believe that there are too many things standing in the way of people being able to pursue their dreams. And so through our process, I tried to remove as many of those as I possibly could. And then the Zoom interview, is really just a conversation about who we are as a Chico State musical theater. Who are you as an artist? And are those two things compatible? And I would say that conversation is as important, if not more important, than how high a note you sing in the video audition.
And how much of so I imagine in the interview, you're really trying to get to know them and it's mostly personality based. How much in terms of the videos are you looking for like who they are, or are you mostly looking just for talent in that, hey, I saw your acting, I saw your singing, I see what's going on in the dance, I see where you are. Is that more of a talent based cut, if there's a cut there? Or is it more already I'm starting to sniff for, hey, I love the material choices and what an interesting artist this person is? Or I guess how do those factor in of like talent versus then a little bit more of who they are in the interview?
Yeah, I would say that the audition itself and the material that you submit, I'm just looking for I am looking for a sense of, okay, what are we starting with in terms of what is your high note? What is your vocal range? Can you sing? Yes, those types of that's really an X's and O's type of thing where I'm just trying to assess what you are starting with. The conversation is not just getting to know the student and what makes them tick, but it's also disclosing, this is who we are. We are social justice mindset. That might not be a good fit for you.
Right.
What does social justice mean to you? Do you want to be a part of this movement to make a musical theater landscape and be the future of Broadway in that way, the musical theater community, which it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
I mean, there'll be people listening who go, "Oh, great, this school's not for me. I'm not that into that. I want intense dance, and I don't want to talk about social justice."
And that's they get to pick that because they're, I was starting to talk a moment ago. I was talking about how when I auditioned for musical theater programs, there was like 15 or 20. So I was the most recent, as we talked about, president of the Musical Theater Educators Alliance, which aspires to unite the programs around the country. There are like 200 plus programs now.
Well, I always used to colloquially say like about 150, and then I looked the other. I was like, no, it's over 200. It's unbelievable. I mean, it just keeps growing every year.
So here's something I want to make sure that your listeners understand is that you are the shoppers. You have so much to choose from. We musical theater programs, we like to make you feel like we're shopping for you, but no. You are shopping for the best fit, and you're going to end up exactly where you're supposed to be. So that hopefully eases some stress from these listeners who I know it's a challenging and stressful process. And I know that there's pressure from people outside of you're looking on Facebook groups, you're looking at ranking lists, and your friends are telling you, oh, such and such program is better than such and such program. There is no such thing as a better program. There's just a better program for you.
That's so well said. I mean, I'm getting a little taste of it with my 2-year-old of like looking at all these things where I'm like, I'd have to audition and she has to interview for the right for me to pay you how many $1,000s a year? Are you kidding? But like that, I mean, that's New York public school, New York private schools, public schools, that whole New York school world of it. But I'm like, that is what our poor students have to go through all the time. And it feels like, to your point, I'm trying to be selected. I'm trying to be chosen because, of course, you want to get into these schools. But you are the one who then at the end, and most of our students do end up with multiple great options. And then they get to be the customer. And it is such a weird mind flip for them to go, wait, I get to ask the questions? Wait, I have the power now? I get to choose where I go?
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that when you're starting out.
Oh, totally.
What about, is there anything else in the application, when you talk about grades, SATs, essays, letters of recommendation, is there anything else in the application part of it that you look at personally or that the school would look at to weed someone out?
So there's two simultaneous parts of this process. To get into the university, there is your standard application and application fee, or application process and fee. I don't see any of that.
Right.
All I look
You're
at,
getting a yes or no from the application.
Yeah. They send me a list of people who have been accepted into the university.
Right.
And to ease the process, I don't look at anybody until I get that list. Once I see who's gotten into the university, that's when I look at the videos, which again is a very X's and O's kind of process. And then we've got that Zoom interview where we can have a conversation about who you are and do we think that this is a good fit.
But
You're
not reading their essays or letters of recommendation at that point in the process. You're going to get to know them personally.
I don't actually see that part. Right. The only thing that we ask for in writing as part of the audition process is a statement on social justice. I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but that is so important that you to us that you do write a statement. Then we have the interview, but I don't see all of those application materials that you submit to the university itself.
I love it. Well, while we're on the social justice and we're talking about, maybe the complexion of your class, in all different ways. I mean, I just love to think about talk about, especially as a program, when you mentioned they are the customers and you're likely not yielding 100% of your yeses, right? That you're going to get some yeses and then you say yes and they say no to you, right? Of course, right? That's for almost all programs. All programs don't yield 100%. I guess, how do you go about that process, especially with consciousness and some of the ways we're talking about of, do you think about gender balance and racial balance and height and size and geographical balance? You sort of mentioned we have an idea of being inclusive to all. How does that square with, if you care about sort of the complexion of your class balance wise on those different factors?
I do not believe there is such a thing as a balanced class, and every class is going to be a little bit different. And I think it's worth saying that when we talk about diversity and we talk about representation of different groups, we're not just talking about, we are obviously talking about race and ethnicity, absolutely, which is a very on your sleeve kind of upfront way of thinking about diversity. But we're also talking about learning diversity. We're also talking about, I have students on the spectrum and I love and celebrate them too, but that's sort of a hidden diversity that maybe the rest of the community doesn't know about. There's socioeconomic diversity. We don't, how do I say this? We welcome everybody with open arms, regardless of the identity that they're bringing to the table.
I love it. No, that's very well said. Yeah, and the effects of some of those neurotypical diversity that you're talking about, we certainly see on our end of it. 10 years ago, it would have been so unique to have a student with autism. It's not that it never happened. We go, whoa, okay, great. Well, and now 7-8 students a year who go, I'm autistic and I'm doing this process. So clearly the effect of people believing, hey, there is a place for me in this business of, I think, multiple, whether it's physical disability or
absolutely
mental disability. That seems like that effect is now trickling down to the students and believing, hey, I could be an actor even if I'm different in some way. In many
absolutely.
Which maybe leads us beautifully. I want to just talk a little bit about intimacy training. And, both you're talking about consent-based casting and some of the ways that you are trained in this. I know this is a training that you have done. If we were to maybe step back a little bit, because I think people most of our listeners will have an idea what you mean by social justice. some of our parent listeners, I think, may not necessarily know what we mean when we talk about what is intimacy training. What is this? What is an intimacy coordinator or whatever, an intimacy director for a show that would have that? Can you tell a little bit, like, what is this?
Yeah. So it's been one of the many changes that we've been talking about in the last few years in our industry. Um, so a few years ago, I petitioned the dean of our college to pay for all of our acting and directing teachers to be trained with theatrical intimacy educators. And theatrical intimacy is, I mean, I think the easiest way to think about, I mean, the first thing that people think about is, okay, we're doing a production of Spring Awakening, and there's a physical romantic scene, but intimacy is actually far more than that. You know, it's yes, it's kissing, but it's also, for some people, any sort of physical contact whatsoever. And so TIE, who I'm a big believer in, and I'm by no means an expert, but you know, they basically are teaching directors how to interact with that material and create an environment that helps the actors that they're working with feel as empowered as possible. Notice I didn't say the word safe, because you know, theater should be safe, but like that's a, in my opinion, a challenging word, because theater is always going to require us to be brave. As one of the founders of TIE says, nobody writes a musical about me sitting on the couch with a beer watching Netflix. You know, that's comfortable. Theater's always a little bit uncomfortable, and we want people to be able to feel brave. And so the consent-based training that I have gone through, and to be honest with you, there are people in my program that are even more experts in this area than me, but it's about making sure that boundaries are respected up front when in any casting process, including scene work in class. We disclose all of the material that we can that could potentially be activating for somebody, and making sure that those work with the actor's boundaries. And so again, all of our performance faculty has gone through these trainings. One of our acting teachers were part of the pilot program that TI did, called the Educators Advocate Program, which was intended to, they don't do a certification because they feel, their philosophy is that being certified in anything is actually a financial commitment that can turn into people being left out. So they've instead created this thing called the Educators Advocate Program, which is intended for the people on campuses that sort of become the question facilitator for anything consent or intimacy related. And that's not me. That's somebody else in our department. But I have gone through several trainings with them. In addition, as president of the Musical Theater Educators Alliance, when I was, we created a partnership where they provided the entire MTE membership with these trainings because of how important I believe them to be.
I love it. I mean, this does feel like we're talking about some of the many ways that the tail's wagging the dog of the industry in terms of the education can be a leader. I mean, we talked a lot, in the previous episodes about stuff like type and, some of the ways that I think schools were a little ahead of the industry, and now the industry's caught up or is catching up continually with some of those questions. This does feel like such an obvious one where it's like, I mean, I definitely felt unsafe at times in school. And there is a different, it is a different experience than a professional environment where it's like you should be taken care of maybe even at a higher level in a school environment. Hopefully then the industry also, and is moving toward taking care of us in these ways. But I think that is certainly an expectation we could have of our educational institutions, that we go, great, you're going to foster this bravery in me, but also not cross my boundaries if I'm
right. Well, and I think, and part of what we aspire to teach is when those boundaries aren't being respected, how do you respectfully and set boundaries and stand up for advocate for yourself? That's the word I'm looking for. In a way that's not going to get you fired, because the fact of the matter is, there are ways that you could respond to unsafe environments that could lead to a bad reputation
Absolutely.
or being fired.
No, it's. I mean, you've often related to, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about like how it's similar to fight
Right.
fight choreographers, fight captains. But I remember, right out of school, my first show out of school, I was doing a fight scene with. It was a Shakespeare show, and it was a fight scene with the lead of the show. It was this big professional actor I really looked up to. I'm 22, and he was being unsafe. I mean, he was improving, and he was in a wild thrashing moment, and kept hitting me. Like I kept, and I like didn't know what to do. I didn't have the tools at 22 to be like, great, here are the steps I can take here. Here's how I can talk about it. Because I'm like, I don't want to seem like I'm trouble. I don't want to seem like I'm not game to, it's a little, your hand's getting a little injured. Who cares? Whatever, you can deal with it. Toughen up, But to be like, what would I do there? What are those tools to how I could address that in a way that I don't feel like I'm causing trouble or,
Can I ask, was there a fight captain for that show?
Fight captain, and the fight choreographer was still there. So, and I did speak to him kind of, but I sort of made it like, it's not a big deal. I'm really fine. It's just like, and I was like showing like the deep bruise on my hand. I was like, it's like not great, but like, I really don't want to like cause any trouble. Like I didn't know how to stand up for myself.
The job.
I just want to keep working, but it hurts a lot.
Totally.
Anyway, do you see, I wonder for the future of it, do you see like how that will relate with, are we going to have fight and intimacy on a lot of professional shows? I kind of wonder of like, especially maybe smaller regional shows, how will that all work with, are directors going to have to get trained so that they're able to deal with this so it's not three different people? Is it one person who comes in and does both? I mean, how do you see that, sort of the future of this industry going?
Well, we're already seeing intimacy choreographers on Broadway. In fact, Chelsea Pace, who is one of the co-founders of TIE, did Strange Loop on Broadway. K-pop, I mean, I can't list all of their resume because it's so extensive. So we're seeing that more and more.
And it seems like Broadway, the answer is yes. For Broadway, you will have both. You kind of wonder, though, if it's like the small regional theater, can they pay to bring in two people for a small show,
It's interesting because I literally just directed a production in the Midwest at a small equity theater company. And there was a huge conversation about this, about do we have the financial resources? I was trained in best practices and I've done all of this training with TIE and was the director. So I felt comfortable.
Right.
Being the intimacy choreographer for the show because it wasn't Spring Awakening, it was Young Frankenstein. But to be honest with you, not all of the actors in the show were comfortable with that.
Is there not a natural conflict of interest of you want the show to look a certain way, and so it's hard for them to say, "Hi, director, I feel unsafe with that," in the same way that you could ask somebody that was a specific position.
Because of that power dynamic. Yeah. And again, going back to the conversations about social justice, like the power dynamic is what always clouds these types of things. Right. So, one of the things that I learned from that experience was in terms of my teaching is making sure I'm teaching my students that if that's something that you don't feel comfortable with, that's outside of your boundaries, ask that when you're negotiating your contract. Will there be an intimacy choreographer that is not the director? And if the answer is no, is that the job for you? I mean, I don't think, well, TIE's philosophy is that it doesn't require, if the tools are used appropriately, it does not require an outside choreographer. But if that's not what the boundaries of the actor is, then the actor, we need to teach our students how to ask those questions upon negotiation, not after they're a week into rehearsal.
Well, and it's potentially a really valuable skill for young actors to think about. Could I, if I was, even if I'm not certified, but if I was trained that I could be an intimacy captain at least or whatever, in the way that I could certainly be a fight captain. I have that training. A lot of stage managers become fire marshals because like any small show you need, like they're just like, it's useful for a stage manager to be on site and know fire stuff because otherwise you have to hire a separate person or an actor has to go do it or whatever. For these small shows. So I wonder if we'll see that of more people sort of getting trained and be like, this is a useful skill set on my resume that I bring to a show. If you hire me, then it won't be a conflict for the director. I'll be the intimacy director or whatever.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you mentioned that, because with this production of Young Frankenstein, there was an actor in the cast who we hired, and they were also the fight choreographer. I
Right.
mean, literally what you're saying, and
Those
we
things
probably
seem to have a little it seems like you go, there's similar, I'm keeping you safe in a similar way with
yeah
different moments, that it seems like there's an interrelation that would work.
yeah yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's enough of our sidebar. We're coming back to just wrap the interview up a little bit with, I'd love to just do any advice that you have for either our prospective students, or maybe especially, for our parent listeners. We have many parent listeners. How would you, I know you also are a parent yourself, how would you advise, a junior, even a sophomore who's starting this process and trying to figure it all out and trying to navigate which
Yeah.
schools I'm even applying to? How would you advise a young person or the parent of a young person in navigating this process?
So I want to reiterate one thing that I had said a little bit earlier, which is that there is no such thing as a best program. There's just the best program for you. And to our parents that are listening, as much as you want to protect and, I mean, maybe even control some of what is best for our kids, the fact of the matter is they're the only ones that know what they need out of a program and
Mm-hmm.
what they need out of their life. And that is I mean, I've got as you said, a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I'm learning that now. Like, hands off, that she knows what she wants and she's gonna fight for it. Luckily, I have a daughter who is unafraid to fight. But so trying to empower the student to identify the priorities that they want in a program. And the fact of the matter is, because most of our musical theater programs are accredited by the same national body, NAST, National Association of Schools of Theater, the curriculum's not going to vary that much. It
Mm-hmm.
will vary some, but it's not going to vary that much. What's going to vary are things that you don't necessarily think about. Do they feel safe on this campus? Do they feel like they have a community outside of the theater program? Do they, what is, I mean, things you would never consider. What is the climate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Going to school, when I went to school in Cincinnati, it was the first time I had to wear like boots in the
Mm-hmm.
wintertime, right? We don't have to do that in Chico. And that's that's a very different experience. The difference between going to school at Ohio Northern, which is in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio, and going to University of the Arts in Philadelphia, those are two very different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, the only person that knows what is a better fit is the student themselves. So,
And when you ask, I mean, it's so well said, but I think so many of our students struggle, if now I'm speaking from the student perspective or from the parent who's trying to empower that said student.
yeah.
It feels like, so often they're asked when they walk in the room, who are you? And they're like, I don't know. I'm a 17-year-old kid. And also, like, what do you want? Because I give them that challenge at the beginning of like, all right, you're going to make your little mission statement for what do you think you want to be, you're looking for in this process and from these schools. And some of them occasionally are like, I know, it's these things. And you go, great. Well, that makes it easier for us to go, here are some schools that would satisfy that if you're right.
Yeah.
Though, of course, it changes 6 months
Right.
later as they do the process. But how do I determine that for myself? If I don't know, like, let's say I'm a kid and I go, I think I want to be happy at school. I don't know that I care about the environment. I don't know. Like, if you're in that place, like, how do you go through that process for yourself of going, let me do some discriminating between this and this and this and making some choices if I feel like it's just one big field of 200 schools and I don't know which one's going to fit me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the impulse is going to be to front load all of this, but I think that part of what we're talking about won't be discovered until the students know where they've been accepted
Mm-hmm.
and they can essentially date the school,
Uh-huh.
go for a visit, talk to the professors. I didn't know. There are many things about my wife, Jamie, who I am in love with. A lot of those things I didn't realize I
Right.
needed in a partner until I found her.
Yep.
And then, I mean, I knew pretty soon that she was going to be the partner for me, because I went into that dating process with an open heart
Mm-hmm.
and really paid attention to what to the identity and the skills and the vibe and all of the things that your partner is for you. I listened through the dating
Yep.
process. And it wasn't until she said or did something that I was like, oh, I love you, and I'm not saying you need to say that you love your college in the dating process, but like, you won't know until you know.
I think it's such good advice, because it's advice I give as well, so it must be good advice. But it's such good advice because it is really hard for the parents of a sophomore listening to this right now, or even a junior, still early in the process. What it means necessarily, because it takes that level of intensity of experience with the schools, it means necessarily you might not get the right 20 schools on your list or whatever of the 200. It's like if you're swiping on the apps or whatever, you don't know you're going to see the right person for, I don't believe there's one right person for your one right school,
Right.
but in terms of, it makes it hard because there's not necessarily a quantitative way to process the 200 schools, put it into ChatGPT and go, these are the right 18 for you to then go through in the dating process. If you're not at that place to know, I think I want X, Y, and Z, it makes that beginning selection process really hard. I mean, it's just,
Well, yeah, and again, there are so many outside factors. Mom and dad, or parents, I should probably say, might take their kid to a school, and the parents might think, "Oh, this is perfect," but then they have a conversation at dinner after the fact, and kids like, "You know what? I really didn't feel comfortable on this campus," and that's okay. you know, the it's so hard to let go of that.
Yeah.
But and then plus I said there's friends, there's Facebook groups, there's I mean, how many different top 100 lists, maybe not 100, but like top 25 lists have you seen? It's just, there's so much noise.
Yeah.
And so, you got to put on the loop headphones, I suppose, filter out the noise and try to figure out what's best for you. So I think that maybe part of this is when you start to feel, when the student starts to feel like a program is the right fit, asking themselves, why does it feel like the right fit? Because if the answer is it's what my best friend said was the best school, that's not the right answer.
Totally true. Totally true. And sometimes for the ones who are more in their heads about it, like, it's not the wrong answer because the school likes you. Like, some people are like, well, that must have been the better school because they rejected my pre-screen. But all these crappy schools are the ones that passed me. Like, that is not how it works. That's not how it works. It's not.
No.
It's not this sort of quantitative, yes, the 5 that said no must have been the 5 best schools because they said no to you or whatever.
Everybody's looking for something different. And frankly, so many schools have these rolling audition processes that it could just be, if there are, because there are schools that balance and whatnot is important to, they've already got somebody like you. And so if you go to school there, the two of you are going to be neck and neck competing for the exact same things the entire 4 years. And so they're doing you a service by not taking you into their program. So, because there are better opportunities someplace else.
So true. All right, we'll wrap there. Where, if people want to do more information on Chico State, we see Chico State SOA. Is that a good Instagram or social handle?
I mean, you could definitely find more information on the website, csuchico.edu.
Yep.
The best musical theater specific, so chico.state.theater.
Chico.state.theater. Okay, great. That will be in our show notes. And do you spell theater with an E-R or an R-E?
R-E.
Incorrect. Incorrect answer. You've got it wrong. We are an American school. We spell it E-R. At MTCA, we spell it E-R. I love it. This was such a pleasure to get to chat with you, Maddie.
This was awesome. I had so much fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, heck yeah. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really loved chatting with Matty. Not only was he so well set up with his professional mic and his sonorous voice, but I also thought a really great and articulate advocate for his program. I really love when guests say, here's what I'm not. I think that's very helpful for our students, when I think too often schools try to pitch themselves as kind of all things to all people, because of course they think they're great, and there's nothing wrong with thinking you're great, but I do think sometimes a disservice to the listener if it sounds like we do everything, when actually you're like, we do these specific things. I also, while we're on the transparency of it all, I also really appreciated the transparency with the way their audition process works, and that they try not to put up arbitrary barriers to entry. Students don't always realize this on their end when it's happening, but many schools will erect those barriers as a way to make themselves seem fancier. So schools that don't get enough applications to need a pre-screen will make themselves a quote-unquote pre-screen school just to make it look like they're getting more applications. And then if you read in the fine print, sometimes they'll be like, it's like pre-screen optional. And you're like, okay, so you're not a pre-screen school then. It's like a store artificially keeping low stock so you think an item is selling out. And it creates a lot of unnecessary work and panic in the process in a way that I think Matthew articulates very well here, right? You are the shoppers and you can only attend one school, so the schools need you. You're trying to find the best fit for you, and for some that might mean very competitive programs that are difficult to get into. But the approach to the process should always have some sense of, where do I choose to spend my money for 4 years to achieve the most growth for myself artistically? And for some of you, you may modify that. You might add on and set myself up for the best career success or whatever your own version of that is. But in all of those versions, you are the ultimate decider and the ultimate customer of where you're going to learn. As far as takeaways, I know you might think I'd go down the topics of intimacy and consent-based casting. I think those are both really interesting and worthy of a takeaway, but I think I am more of a learner than an expert in those areas. So I'm going to do more listening than talking on those topics. But all of that, I think, is really in the zeitgeist of American theater right now. And I know, tempting, we had a little dating metaphor. We talked about top 10 lists. Both of those things I think have been well covered in takeaways before, so I'm not going to go into that. But I just do want to do a small takeaway about transfers for those of you who are considering that path, whether you're in school now or just thinking about that potentially as a viable option. Since what Maddie describes here is truly the exception and not the rule when it comes to switching programs. He said they are willing to accept students potentially as juniors, and I would say that is really, truly rare. I've heard it happening before at other programs, but very rare, and normally only if there's like a truly like-for-like training in a very similar BFA program. Maybe the faculty members know each other and can speak toward how similar they are. Maybe there's a close relationship with one of the faculty members of the school that you're entering into. More common, definitely, to potentially be able to start as a sophomore if you have enough credits, especially in more of the BFA liberal arts programs and with an adjusted schedule. But by far, the most common situation would be to start over as a freshman. Most BFA MT programs are so specific with the credits they ask for and wanting the cohort of an individual class to learn and grow together, meaning they want you to take freshman acting, they want you to all take the basic stuff together, that they're going to want you to do the full 4-year progression with them. That's not to say they won't accept transfers. They will take students who are technically a transfer student into the university. Basically, all schools will do that, but you're going to often end up having to do extra time if you choose the route of transferring. I'll say in my class at Carnegie Mellon, there were a few students who were technically transfer, actually a good handful of students who were technically transfers, having spent 1, 2, some even 3 years at another college before joining our class, but all started as if they were freshmen. With us, they were just able to get into bars much sooner than we could. Is that the note I'm going to end on? It sounds like it, amazingly. This episode was produced by Meghan Cordier. You can rate and review us on your podcast app if you like giving back to your favorite podcast, and follow us at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram. Of course, check us out at mtca.nyc for more information on all of our individual coaching services and events like those mock auditions I talked about at the top of the show. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, they call it Chico State. If Chico means little, does that mean California is a little state? That doesn't seem quite right. We'll see you next week.